investing. I think Silverstone are investing. The clusters invest in the hope, I think, that they will get support from local authorities, from heartlands, from government. I'm not sure about paying back that investment. I think that's. I'm not sure that I could answer that one.
Jeremy?
Well, I think ultimately, as any business, it ends up paying back in terms of its own corporate taxes. The local residents bring prosperity to the area in terms of spending their own incomes locally. I mean, that again is part of helping the local economy that you see from clusters being formed.
Okay. What comes first? As another question, what comes first, Pim, the cluster or the transport infrastructure?
Wow, interesting one. I mean, if you look at Silverstone clusters specifically, I mean, it basically developed ever since the Second World War, when a couple of people were quite enthusiastic about using a disused airport to go racing, and it's kind of built over time from that. So I think it starts with the companies, but as the number of companies increase, the demand for the infrastructure increases as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, maybe with the companies slightly leading it.
Nigel, you're frowning, or are you thinking?
No, thinking, that's it. No, I agree entirely. From our point of view, it was heritage. It was chosen, that particular, like Silverstone, an airfield, World War II airfield, it was chosen as a place to develop basically in secret ballistic missiles. So it was that sort of rocket testing, that propulsion. So the companies come first, and then I think probably the infrastructure follows on, or needs to follow on.
Well, I make of this what you will, Joe. Does the panel have thoughts on whether electrical vertical takeoff and landing aircraft can support clusters as well as support decarbonisation of air travel?
Wow, that is a niche question. I mean, I think, look, I'm not an expert on electrical vertical takeoff aircraft. What I can tell you is that the industry has a glide path to net zero by 2050. Our airport will be net zero in carbon by 2038, which is 2 years ahead of what the government's target is for airports. So absolutely, we need to supply the additional international connectivity that can help clusters in our catchment thrive, but we need to do that in a sustainable way. Okay. And sustainable aviation fuels, hydrogen, modernising airspace are all part of the mix about how we do that sustainably.
Okay, couple more before we break for the next panel. Julian Worth says, are clusters investing in rapid charging for battery HGVs, which are now in use, as well as for cars? Pim, are you doing that? Nigel, are you doing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's investment happening, but also a number of our companies are actively working on developing that technology and improving it.
For HGVs as well as cars?
For HGVs as well, yeah. One of our members is producing ceramic hydrogen engines for freight specifically.
Okay. Nigel?
Yeah, we're doing that as well. I mean, solar is a big part of what we do, and I think it's worth saying that the owners of these clusters are now driven 100% by their net zero targets. That's the thing that's probably changed in the last 3-5 years, is that sustainability runs through everything that Westcott does, and I'm sure all the other clusters do. But we do have solar. We've got a lot of solar. We produce a lot of solar renewable energy, and for that to connect in and power EV charging on the site is a critical piece of what we're doing at the moment. Okay.
Yeah. Nigel, do you see the forthcoming inevitable belt tightening as being as restricting your ability to grow?
It's probably caused a pause in the last 2 or 3 months, I think, to be fair. I think we're a pension fund. It's a pension fund, so you've got to be careful with people's money. But I think, again, with clusters, there's from an investment point of view in a cluster, there's normally a range of businesses, and there's a range. So if some are not, maybe they're retrenching slightly, there'll be somebody else who's actually investing. So if your cluster has a nice blend, then it shouldn't affect too much your investment strategy.
Joe, what do you think?
So I think, what do I think on that? I think if you look at the economic infrastructure that I was talking about before, establishing new routes to places like Boston, that doesn't require government investment. That doesn't actually require investment from us either, because we already have all the infrastructure, the runway in order to do that. that investment sits with the airlines, and they can choose where they're going to establish those new routes. And it's incumbent on us as a region, if we want that connectivity and that investment, to pitch a really strong case, which is part of the work that I've been doing, showing that that latent demand for better connectivity does exist with the businesses here.
Okay. A couple of final points. Jeremy, we talked a lot about improving transport, physical transport connectivity. Presumably, there's also a huge amount of digital connectivity which needs to go in. Is that being given sufficient prioritisation?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it is being given prioritisation. There are also issues around energy provision and connection to the grid. So yes, in every other respect, connectivity for these growing clusters is very, very important.
So what's the role of EEH? Do you look to them to bring the energy providers, the water suppliers, the data network suppliers together?
I mean, it's as you were asking earlier. It's the combination of creating the confidence. I mean, the infrastructure plans of the utility providers are being looked at years ahead. So one has to be talking with confidence about the demand that will exist in a region like this to get them to then commit sufficiently far ahead for that provision and to continue to reduce the connection times that there are.
Okay, so very, very quickly, just to wrap things up, what can people here do to support the creation and the expansion and the success of clusters in this region? Nigel?
Well, I think it's really just what I said earlier. I think in terms of transport, we're all trying to get out of the car and leave the car at home. And I think also with the sort of people that are attracted to clusters these days, the younger generation aren't necessarily car owners. The apprentices may not have cars. People don't need cars. So it's still to service the clusters and try and get out of the car. And we would look to Heartland to help us with other forms of transport, I think,
Pim?
to connect us.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Sustainability is going to be key. Making sure that we meet the future demands is going to be key, but also looking at what is going to be required and what the new people coming in are looking for. But key is also collaboration. Work with us, work with the organizations out there, so we can all work on it together rather than doing things in isolation.
Okay. Joe, what do you think?
I'd just ask businesses in the region to work with us to build the case to airlines in our case, because they can invest in various regions, countries, and if we demonstrate to them that there's a really strong demand for better international connectivity, a piece of work I've started with Cambridge, but which would be complemented by other parts of the country as well, then we know that economic dividend in terms of inward investment is really, really powerful.
Great. Final word, Jeremy, what do you think? What are you looking to this audience, but also what are you looking to Naomi to do to really drive forward clusters?
Well, we have some fantastic stories, success stories, going on in this region. I know from an Oxfordshire point of view, but I know across the region, the number of new industries. We are one of the real growth engines of the UK. So we simply need to go on telling that story to central government. As we've heard this morning, we do need the commitment that only central government can bring. With that commitment, we will go on attracting talent, indeed in many cases international talent, choosing to come here, whether that's young students or people much further through their careers. This is a fantastic region to come and live and work in. We need to go on telling that story to central government to get the commitment, and a lot of the rest will happen.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. You heard it here first. Thank you very much to Nigel, Joe, Pim, and to Jeremy for sending us in around clusters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're dismissed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You probably want to give your microphones because you've got a panel which is changing over very rapidly, but I'm going to bring the rest of the panel on for the next session in a moment because Paul is going to say something. No, he's not. Yeah, go on.
So because we're doing a quick changeover, so if I can see Emily's already there, Dan Clark, Laura Morgan, Rajinder Sharma and Carl, I saw you around, but if you could go and get mic'd up, Anthony will bring you on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's my panel. But before they arrive, I'm going to introduce our next speaker who's going to set the scene for us. Cllr Emily Darlington, Cabinet Member from Milton Keynes Council. Okay. But before I do that,
Oh, come
stay
on.
there. Calm down. So many people, so many things coming in here.
Up, down, up, down.
Naomi has drawn my attention to something which is worth pointing out, that absolutely good point was made, and we do take that on board about all male panels, but just to point out there's an all-female panel this afternoon, which is going to be worth listening to as well. So that's right, isn't it, Emily? Yes, it is.
Yeah,
That wasn't what you're here to say, is it?
No,
But you're
no,
here to,
no.
Look, we're going to talk now about innovation. I built it a bit earlier on. We're going to talk about innovation and how to drive innovation in this region. So, Emily, Cabinet Member for Milton Keynes Council, let me ask you to set the scene for us. What is your expectations? What are your take on the need for innovation in this region? Over to you.
Perfect. So I have a few slides.
There's a slide.
So that should work. Or not. I can talk without them. Is it up? Yeah, okay, it's up. Right, so I've been asked to set the scene for our session on innovation. I'm a cabinet member here in Milton Keynes. I also sit on the leaders board at EEH and the Innovation Champion. And in this first part, I am going to be a bit unashamedly pro-MK because I'm very proud of the city I live in, but also because I know we've got some great examples coming from the other panelists during the Q&A, so I don't want to steal any of their thunder. So Milton Keynes is known for being innovative, but why? And I think the very first thing that starts with is the people. So if you live in Milton Keynes, you have chosen to live here. You are a pioneer, and it doesn't matter how far you've moved from, whether you've moved from London or Scotland or Pakistan or South Korea, you have come here for a better life for your family. And you want to be a part of building a city that is different, but also is looking towards the future. So I think the very first thing that allows innovation to flourish in Milton Keynes is actually our residents. And alongside our residents, we work really carefully with everybody across the city to actually come up with where do we want to be in 2050. We had a huge session right across, and that looked at everything from health